Thursday, August 5, 1943. Dearest Kitty, today let's talk about the lunch break. It's 12:30. The whole gang breathes a sigh of relief. Mr. Van Maren, the man with the shady past, and Mr. Decock have gone home for lunch. Upstairs, you can hear the thud of the vacuum cleaner of Mrs. Van D's beautiful and only rug. Margaret tucks a few books under her arm and heads for the class for slow learners, which is what Dussel seems to be. Pym goes and sits in a corner and with his constant companion, Dickens, in hope of finding a bit of peace and quiet. Mother hastens upstairs to help the busy little housewife, and I tidy up both the bathroom and myself at the same time. 12:45. One by one, they trickle in. First Mr. Geese, and then either Mr. Kleiman or Mr. Kugler, followed by Beb and sometimes even Mia. One clustered around the radio. They all listened raptly to the BBC. This is the only time the members of the next family don't interrupt each other since ever. Even Mr. Van Den can't argue with the speaker. Off 1:15. Food distribution. Everyone from the downstairs gets a cup of soup plus pudding. If there happens to be any, a contented Mr. Gies sits on the divan or leans against the desk with his newspaper cup and usually the cat at his side. If one of the three is missing, he doesn't hesitate to let his protest be heard. Mr. Kleiman relates the latest news from town, and he's an excellent source. Mr. Kugler hurries up the stairs, gives a short but solid knock on the door, and comes in, either wriggling his hand or rubbing them in glee, depending on whether he's quiet and in a bad or talkative. Whether he's quiet and in a bad mood or talkative and in a good mood. 1:45. Everyone raises from the table and goes about their business. Margaret and Mother do the washing up. Mr. Van D. heard from the divan. Peter from the attic. Father from his divan. Dussel too, and Anne does her homework. What comes next is the quietest hour of the day when they're all asleep. There are no disturbances. To judge by his face, Dussel is dreaming of food, but I don't look at him long because the time whistles by, and before you know it, it'll be 4 p.m. and the pedantic Dr. Dussel will be standing with the clock in his hand because I'm 1 minute late clearing off the table. Yours, Anne. Saturday, August 7, 1943. Dearest Kitty, as a few weeks ago, I just started writing a story, something I made up from beginning to end, and I've enjoyed it so much that the products of my pen are piling up. Yours, Anne. Monday, August 9, 1943. Dearest Kitty, we now continue with a typical day in the annex. Since we've already had lunch, it's time to describe dinner. Mr. Van Dan is served first and takes a generous portion of whatever he likes. Usually joins in the conversations, never fails to give his opinion. Once he's spoken, his word is final. If anyone dares to suggest otherwise, Mr. Vandy can put up a fight. Mr. Vandy can put up a fight. Oh, he can hiss like a cat, but I'd rather he didn't. Once you've seen it, you'd never want to see it again. His opinion is the best. He knows the most about everything. Granted, the man he has Granted, the man has a good head on his shoulder, but it's swollen to no small degree. Madame, actually, the best thing would be to say nothing. Some days, especially when a foul mood is on the way, her face is hard to read. If you analyze the discussion, you realize she's not the subject, but the guilty party. A fact everyone prefers to ignore. Even so, you could call her the instigator, stirring up trouble. Now that's what Mrs. Van Daan calls fun, stirring up trouble between Mrs. Frank and Anne. Margaret and Mr. Frank aren't quite as easy. But let's return to the table. Mrs. Van Daan may think she doesn't always get enough, but that's not the case. The choicest potatoes, the tastiest morsel, the tenderest bit of whatever there is, that's Madame's motto. The other can also have their turn as long as I get the best, exactly what she accuses Anne Frank of doing. Her second watchword is keep talking. As long as somebody's listening, it doesn't seem to occur to her to wonder whether they're interested. She must think that whatever Mrs. Vanden says will interest everyone. Smile coquettishly. Pretend you know everything. Offer everyone a piece of advice and mother them. That's sure to make a good impression, but if you take a better look, the good impression fades. One, she's hardworking, two, cheerful, three, coquettish, and sometimes a pretty face. That's Petronella Van Daan. But if you take a better look, the good impression fades. One, she's hardworking, two, cheerful, three, coquettish, and sometimes a pretty face. That's Petronella Van Daan. The third diner says a very little. Young Mr. Van Daan is usually quiet and hardly makes his presence known. As far as his appetite is concerned, he's a Danaidean vessel that never gets full. Even after the most substantial meal, he can look you calmly in the eye and claim he could have eaten twice as more. Number 4, Margaret eats like a bird and doesn't talk at all. She eats only vegetables and fruits, spoiled in the opinion of the Mr. Van Daans, too little exercise and fresh air in ours. Beside her, Mama has a hearty appetite, does her share of the talking. No one has the impression as they do with Mrs. Van Daan. That this is a housewife. What's the difference between the two? Well, Mrs. Van Daan does the cooking and Mother washes up and polishes the furniture. Number 6 and 7. I won't say much about father and me. The former is the most modest person at the table. He always looks to see whether the others have been served first. He needs nothing for himself. The best things are for the children. His goodness personified seated next to him is the annex's little bundle of nerves. Docile, help yourself. Keep your eyes on the food. Eat and don't talk. And if you have to say something, then go for goodness' sake. Talk about food. That doesn't lead to quarrels, just to bragging. He consumes enormous portions, and no is not part of his vocabulary whether the food is good or bad. Trousers that come up to his chest, a red jacket, black patent leather slippers, and horn-rimmed glasses. That's how he looks when he's at work at the little table, always studying and never progressing. This is interrupted by his afternoon nap, food, and his favorite spot, the lavatory. 3, 4, or 5 times a day, there's bound to be someone waiting outside the door, hopping impatiently from one foot to another, trying to hold it in and barely managing. Doesn't care, not a whit. From 7:15 to 7:30, from 12:30 to 1, from 2 to 2:15, from 4 to 4:15, from 6 to 6:15, from 11:30 to 12. You can set your watch by them. These are the times for his regular sessions. He never deviates or lets himself be swayed by the voices outside the door begging him to open up before disaster occurs. Number 9 is not a part of our annexed family, although share our house and table. Bab has a healthy appetite. She cleans her plate and isn't choosy. Bab's easy to please and that pleases us. She can be characterized as follows: cheerful, good humored, kind, and willing. Tuesday, August 10, 1943. Dearest Kitty, a new idea. During meals, I talk more to myself than to others, which is to advantages. First, they're glad they don't have to listen to my continuous chatter, and second, I don't have to get annoyed by their opinions. I don't think my opinions are stupid, but other people do. So it's better to keep them to myself. I apply to some tactic when I have to eat something I loathe. I put the dish in front of me, pretend it's delicious, avoid looking as much as it possible, and it's good before. And it's gone before I've had time to realize what it is. When I get up in the morning, another very disagreeable moment. I leap out of bed, think of myself. You'll be slipping back under the covers soon. Walk to the window, take down the black out screen, sniff at the crack until I feel a bit of fresh air, and I'm awake. I strip the bed as fast as I can so I don't be tempted to get back in. Do you know what mother calls this sort of thing? The art of living. Isn't that a funny expression? We've all been a little confused this past week because of our dearly beloved Wester Torrent bills have been carted off to be melted down before the war, so we have no idea of the exact time, either night or day. I still have hopes that they'll come up with the substitute made of tin or copper or some such thing to remind the neighborhood of the clock. Everywhere I go, upstairs or down, they all cast admiring glances at my feet, which are adorned by a pair of exceptionally beautiful for these times like these shoes. Mia managed to snap them up for 27.50 guilders, burgundy colored, sewed and leather with medium-sized high heels. If I feel as if I were on slits and look even taller than I already am. Yesterday was my unlucky day. I pricked my right thumb with the blunt end of a big needle. As a result, Margaret had to peel potatoes for me, take the good with the bad, and writing was awkward. Then I bumped into the cupboard door so hard it nearly knocked me over and was scolded for making such a racket. They wouldn't let me run water to bathe my forehead. So now I'm walking around with a giant lump over my right eye. They wouldn't let me run water to bathe my forehead, so now I'm walking around with a giant lump over my right eye. To make matters worse, the little toe on my right foot got stuck in the vacuum cleaner. It bled and hurt, but my other ailments were already causing me so much trouble that I let this one slide, which was stupid of me because now I'm walking around with an infected toe. Oh, what with the ointment, the gauze, and the tape, I can't get my heavenly new shoes on my foot. Dussel has put us in danger for the umpteenth time. He actually had me bring him a book, an anti-Mussolini tirade which has been banned. On the way here, she was knocked off down by an SS motorcycle. She lost her head and shouted, "You brutes," and went on her way. I didn't dare think what would have happened if she had been taken down to headquarters. Yours N. A daily chore in our little community, peeling potatoes. One person goes to get himself newspaper, another the knives, keeping the best for himself, of course. The third put the potatoes, and the fourth the water. Mr. Dussel begins. He may not always peel them very well, but he always peel non-stop, glancing left and right to see if everyone is doing it the way he does. No, they're not. Look, Anne, I am taking Peter in my hand, like so, and going from the top to bottom. Nine, not so, but so. I think my way is the easier, Mr. Dussel, I say tentatively. But this is best, and this you can take from me, of course. It is no matter, you do the way you want. We go on peeling. I glance at Dussel over the corner of my eye, lost in thoughts. He shakes his head. Over me, no doubt, but says no more. I keep on peeling. Then I look at father on the other side of me. To father, peeling potatoes is not a chore, but precision work. When he reads, he has a deep wrinkle in the in the back of his head. But when he is preparing potatoes, beans, or vegetables, he seems to be totally absorbed in the task. He puts on his potato peeling face, and when it's set in that particular way, it would be impossible for him to turn out anything less than a perfectly peeled potato. I keep on working. I glance up for a second, but that's all the time I need. Mrs. Van D is trying to attract Dussel's attention. She starts by looking at his direction, but Dussel pretends not to notice. She winks, but Dussel pretends on feeling. She laughs, but Dussel doesn't even look up. That mother laughs too, but Dussel pays them no mind. Having failed to achieve her goal, Mrs. Van D is obliged to change tactics. There's a brief silence. Then she says, Putty, why don't you put on an apron? Otherwise, I'll have to spend all day tomorrow trying to get the spots on out of your suit. I'm not getting it dirty. Another brief silence. Putty, why don't you sit down? I'm fine this way. I like standing up. Silence. Putty, look out! Do spirits shone? What the heck's that? Now you're splashing. I know, Mommy, but I'm being careful. Mrs. Vandy cast about for another topic. Putty, why aren't the British carrying out any bombing raids today? Because the weather's bad, Curly. But yesterday it was such nice weather and they weren't flying then either. Let's drop the subject. Why? Can a person talk about that or offer an opinion? No. Well, why in the world not? Oh, be quiet. Mummy. Mr. Frank always answers his wife. Mr. Van is trying to control himself. This remark always rubs him up the wrong way. But Mrs. Van is not one to quit. Oh, there's never going to be an invasion. Mrs. Van is trying to control himself. This remark always rubs him up the wrong way, but Mrs. Van is not one to quit. Oh, there's never going to be an invasion. Mr. Van D turns white, and when she notices it, Mrs. Van D turns red, but she's not about to be deterred. The British aren't doing a thing. The bomb bursts. And now shut up, Donnerwetter Mel, which means for crying out loud. Mother can barely stifle a laugh, and I stare straight ahead. Scenes like these are repeated almost daily unless they have just had a terrible fight. In that case, neither Mr. nor Mrs. Van D says a word. It's time for me to get some more potatoes. I go up to the attic where Peter is busy picking fleas from the cat. He looks up, the cat notices it, and whoosh, he's gone. Out the window and into the rain gutter, Peter swears. I laugh and slip out of the room. Freedom in the annex. 5:30. Beb's arrival signaled the beginning of our nightly freedom. Things get going right away. I go upstairs with Beb, who usually has her pudding before the rest of us. The moment she sits down, Mrs. Van D begins stating her wishes. Her list usually starts with, "Oh, by the way, Beb, something else I'd like." Beb winks at me. Mrs. Van D doesn't miss a chance to make her wishes known to whoever comes upstairs. It must be one of the reasons none of them like to go up there. 5:45. Beb leaves. I go down to floor to have a look around, first to the kitchen, then to the private office, and then to the coal store to open the cat door for Mushi. After a long tour of inspection, I wind up in Kugler's office. Mr. Van Den is combining all the drawers and files for today's mail. Peter picks up Bushi and the warehouse key. Pim locks the typewriters upstairs. Margaret looks around for a quiet place to do her office work. Mrs. Van D puts a kettle of water on the gas ring. Mother comes down the stairs with a pan of potatoes. We all know our jobs. Soon Peter comes back from the warehouse. The first question they ask him is whether he's remembered the bread. No, he hasn't. He crouches before the door to the front office to make himself as small as possible and crawl in on his head and knees to the steel cabinet, takes out the bread and starts to leave. At any rate, that's what he intends to do. But before he knows what's happened, Mushi has jumped over him and gone to sit under the desk. Peter looks all around him. Aha, there's the cat. He crawls back into the office and grabs the cat by the tail. Mushi hisses. Peter shies. What has he accomplished? Mushi is now sitting by the window licking herself, very pleased at having escaped Peter's clutches. Peter has no choice but to lure her with a piece of bread. Mushi takes the bait, follows him, and the door closes. I watch the entire scene through a crack in the door. Mr. Van Den is angry and slams the door. Margaret and I exchange looks and think the same thing. He must have worked himself into a rage again because of some blunder on Mr. Kugler's part, and he's forgotten at the cake company next door. He's all forgotten all about the cake company next door. Company? Another set is heard in the hallway. Dussel comes in, goes toward the window with an air of propriety, sniffs, coughs, sneezes, and clears his throat. He's out of luck. It was Pepper. He continues into the front office. The curtains are open, which means he can't get at his writing paper. He disappears with a scowl. Margaret and I exchange another glance. One less page for his sweetheart tomorrow. I hear her say, "I'm not in agreement." An elephant tread is heard on the stairway. It's Dussel, seeking comfort in his favorite spot. An elephant's tread is heard on the stairway. It's Dussel, seeking comfort in his favorite spot. We continue working. Knock, knock, knock. 3 taps means dinner time. Monday, August 23, 1943. When die Uhr halb 9 tagt. What's that? I don't know. When the clock strikes past 8. When the clock strikes 8:30. Margaret and Mother are nervous. Shh, Father. We quiet Otto. Shh, Pim. It's 8:30. Come here. You can't run the water anymore. Walk softly. A sample of what's said to Father in the bathroom at the stroke of 8:30. He has to be in the living room. No running water, no flushing toilets, no walking around, no noise whatsoever. As long as the office staff hasn't arrived, sound travel more easily to the warehouse. The door opens upstairs at 8:20 and This is followed by the three gentle taps on the floor. Anne's porridge. I clamber up the stairs to get my dog bowl. But back downstairs, everyone has to be done quickly. Quickly, I comb my hair. Quickly, I comb my hair, put away the potty, shove the bed back into place. Quiet. The clock is striking 8:30. Margaret and mother are nervous. Shh, father, be quiet, Otto. Shh, Pim. It's 8:30. Come here. You can't run the water anymore. What? Walk slowly. A sample of what says to father in the bathroom. At the stroke of past 8, he has to be in the living room. No running water, no flushing toilet, no walking around, no noise whatsoever. As long as the office staff hasn't arrived, sounds travel more easily to the warehouse. The door opens upstairs at 8:30, and this is followed by gentle three taps on the floor. Anne's porridge. I clamber up the stairs to get my dog bowl. Back downstairs, everything has to be done quickly. I comb my hair, put away the potty, shove the bed back into place. Quiet. The clock is striking 8:30. Mrs. Vandy changed shoes and shuffles through the room in her slippers. Mr. Vandy, too. A veritable Charlie Chaplin. All is quiet. The idle family scene has now reached its high point. I want to read or study, and Margaret does too. Father and mother ditto. Father is sitting with Dickens as the dictionary, of course, on the edge of the sagging, squeaky bed, which doesn't even have a decent mattress. Two bolsters, two bolsters can be piled on top of each other. I don't need these. He think I can manage without them. Once he starts reading, he doesn't look up. He laughs now and then and tries to get mother to read a story. I don't have the time right now. He looks disappointed, but then continues to read. A little while later, when he comes across another good passage, he tries again. You have to read this, mother. Mother sits on the folding bed, either reading, sewing, knitting, or studying, whichever is next on her list. An idea suddenly occurs to her, and she quickly says, so as to not forget. And remember to Margaret, jot this down. After a while, it's quiet again. Margaret slams her book shut. Father knits his forehead, his eyebrows forming a funny curve, and his wrinkle of concentration reappearing at the back of his head. And he buries himself in his book again. Mother starts chatting with Margaret, and I get curious and listen to. Pim is drawn to the conversation. 9 o'clock breakfast. Friday, September 10, 1943. Dearest Kitty, every time I write to you, something special has happened, usually unpleasant rather than pleasant. This time, however, something wonderful is going on. On Wednesday, September 8, we were listening to the 7 o'clock news when we heard an announcement. Here is some of the best news of the war so far. Italy has capitulated. Italy has unconditionally surrendered. The Dutch broadcast from England began at 8:15 with the news. Listeners, an hour and 15 minutes ago, just as I finished writing my daily report, we received the wonderful news of Italy's capitulation. I tell you, I never tossed my notices into the waste paper basket and more delighted than I did today. God Save the King, the American national anthem, and the Russian Internationale were played. As always, the Dutch program was uplifted without being too optimistic. The British have landed in Naples. Northern Italy is occupied occupied by the Germans. The truce was signed on Friday, September 3, the day the British landed in Italy. The Germans are ranting and raving in all the newspapers at the treachery of Badoglio and the Italian king. Still, there is bad news as well. It's about Mr. Kleiman. As you know, we all like him very much. He's unfailingly cheerful and amazingly brave, despite the fact that he's always sick and in pain and can't eat much or do a lot of walking. When Mr. Kleiman enters the room, the sun begins to shine, Mother said recently, and she's absolutely right. Now it seems he has to go into hospital for a few difficult operations on his stomach and will have to stay there for at least 4 weeks. You should have seen him when he said goodbye to us. He acted so normally as though he were just set off to do an errand. Thursday, September 16, 1943. Dearest kid, relationship here in the annex are getting worse all the time. We don't dare open our mouths at mealtime except to slip in a bite of food. Because no matter what we say, someone inbound is to resent it or to take it wrong way. Mr. Fox will occasionally come to visit us. Unfortunately, he's not doing very well. He isn't making it any easier for the family because his attitude seems to be, oh, what do I care? I'm going to die anyways. When I think how touched everyone is here, I can just imagine what it must be like to at Vauxhall. I've been taking valerian every day to fight anxiety and depression, but it doesn't stop me from being even more miserable the next day. A good hearty laugh would help better than 10 valerian drops. But we've almost forgotten how to laugh. Sometimes I'm afraid my face is going to sag with all the sorrow and that my mouth is going to permanently droop at the corners. The others aren't doing any better. Everyone here is dreading the great terror known as winter. Another fact that doesn't exactly brighten up our days is that Mr. Van Maren, the man who works in the warehouse, is getting suspicious about the annex. A person with any brain, must have noticed by now that Mia sometimes says she's going to be to the lab, Beb to the file room, and Mr. Clement to the opaque supplies. Mr. Kugler claims that annex doesn't belong to this building at all, but to the next door. We wouldn't care about Mr. Van Maren thought of situation except that he is known to be unreliable, to possess a high degree of curiosity. He's not one who can put off with flimsy excuses. One day Mr. Kugler wanted to be extra cautious, so at 20 past 12, he put on his coat and went to the drugstore around the corner. Less than 5 minutes later, he came back and he sneaked up the stairs like a thief to visit us. At 1:15, he started to leave, but Beb met him on the land and warned them that Van Maren was in the office. Mr. Kugler did an about face and stayed with us until 30. Then he took off his shoes and went in his stockinged feet, despite this cold, to the front attic and down the other stairway, taking one step at a time to avoid the creaks. It took him 15 minutes to negotiate the stairs, but he wound up safely in the office after having entered from the outside. In the meantime, Beb had got rid of Van Maren and come to get Mr. Kugler from the annex, but he'd already left, and at that time he was tiptoeing down the stairs. What must the passers-by have thought when they saw the manager putting on his shoes outside? Hey, you there, in socks. Yours, Anne.